for the team meeting today. We'll just quickly go through the agenda. So we do have 2 guest speakers today. So Diane will introduce them when we start. We will have a patient voice by Diane and Pam. We'll go through the average daily census, a general staffing update, welcome our new hires to our team, talk about some new schedules that will be coming, Civilitas, we'll do an infection prevention update, talk about Vina, the Vina app, review the Net Promoter Score, review our CPI move of the meeting, and then talk about general updates. So going forward with our team meetings, the last few slides will kind of be standardized. We'll do a little bit of a roundtable of unit updates, case management updates, and therapy updates. Now that we have the 3 leaders and can kind of do that. So that's how we'll wrap up the meeting, and then we'll talk about the staff pickup drawing at the very end. So it's kind of a shorter agenda today. I know with the holiday, sometimes that happens, but so I don't foresee it taking the full time, but we'll just make sure we review everything that needs to be reviewed. So, all right, so with that, I will turn it over to Diane, and she can introduce our guest speaker, and then our second guest speaker.
So we're going to welcome Rick up to talk with us. Rick is with our system, and he's going to talk about waste management, and it's a whole system initiative that we just want to get this information out to everyone. We thought this would be a good place to get everyone involved in what we're doing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having it in a big setting like this, so I don't have to have multiple training sessions. But last strategy day away, I did a presentation on waste. So this aligns with our strategy, operational efficiency, and waste. What are we doing that we see as work, but it's really not work, as far as the patient's perspective. So before we get into the waste, I want to describe what is value and what is not value. So value has to be defined by your customer or your patient, right? You got to look at it through their lens, not our lens. It has to be performed at the right place at the right time. It has to, the outcome or activity, the customer has to be willing to pay for it, right? And it has to change state in some manner. If it doesn't change state, then you didn't actually make this process or this thing evolve into something new. So those are the 3 criteria that, from a customer, defines what value is. So value-added activities are things that the customer is willing to pay for. The treatments, the administration of sedation, the reading of images, the stuff that you do to help the patient, right? They want that, they're willing to pay for it, it's value. Non-value added stuff is all of the things that get in the way of you being able to add that value. The searching for stuff, the rework of stuff, the duplicate entry of things. The patient might be willing to pay for it to be done once, but are they willing to pay for it to be done multiple times? Now in healthcare, there are things that the patient isn't going to be willing to pay for, but we have to be accredited. So we have to do these things in order to have the doors open that our patients can come in. So the idea is we need to do those things as efficiently as possible because they're not adding value to our customer. So the destroyer of value is what we call waste, right? It's any activity that consumes a resource without producing added value to it, whether it's a product or a service. In Lean, my background is in Lean, we talk about we want to see the waste in the process and we want to work to remove that waste in the process. The idea is work smarter, not harder. The things to remember about waste is the waste is not the problem. The waste is the symptom of the problem. You have to understand what's creating that waste, because it points to underlying problems within our processes. And we need to see this through the eyes of the patient. So to the patient, it's disrespectful to the patient because it asks them to endure things that they don't want, right? They don't want the waiting. It's disrespectful to you as staff because it asks you to do things that you know don't add value to your patients. And it's disrespectful to society and our system because we have limited resources, we have limited staff, we have to use you to the best of our abilities, most efficient way possible. We want to help remove the things that aren't adding value so you can do more of the things that you value, your patients value. Because it's ironic, you ask the staff, you ask the patient, they want the same thing. Time with my doctor, time with my nurse. It's all of the stuff that gets in the way of that. So what you want and what your patient want are aligned, but we got to get rid of the stuff that's preventing us from doing that, having the time with the patient. So in continuous improvement, we look at waste, and there's a nice little acronym that you can remember. It's called downtime, defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized human talent, transportation, inventory, motion, excess or extra processing. These are what we call waste. These are the things in a process where flow stops. Okay? So when we talk about a process, we want the patient to flow through this process. And wherever something happens when that flow is inhibited, that's where we got to figure out what is going on in this process. How do we fix this process to remove this waste? So I'm going to go into each of these individually. So defects. The effort involved to inspect and or fix a defect, a problem, a mistake. Something happened and now I'm doing something, I'm reworking this. So if you're in a process and you're like, man, I'm reworking this, it should be like a red flag going off, ding, ding, ding. There's a defect here, there's something broke down in the process because now I'm having to do something a second time. The patient might have been willing to be done the first time, but are they willing to pay for it to be done the second time? So whenever you're in a process and it's like, I'm reworking this thing, you need to figure out what led to that defect. Let's put the solution in there. That way you don't have to expect for that defect, you don't have to rework that defect. Overproduction, producing more products or services than is needed or before they are needed. So drawing an extra tube of blood just in case. Adding an extra order just in case. I don't know, they might need it. Okay. That extra that extra tube of blood forces the patient to endure an extra long poke. It's disrespectful to you because it forces you to do an extra long poke. And it wastes resources as far as supplies and time, right? So we really have to get critical of looking at these things. Am I putting too much effort or working too hard at this? And the other thing to this is not just producing too much, but sometimes we produce it too soon. So I do something because I am swamped, I'm just trying to survive. I know I'm gonna have to do this thing down here. I'm here in this room already, I'm gonna do it. Meanwhile, something in this time frame, something changed, and now I have to redo it. Even though I did it already, I have to redo it because it's no longer valid. So by over processing it and producing it too soon, forced me to have to redo it. Waiting, this is key. I can guarantee you every single process has this. And I guarantee you, you don't feel the weight because you're gonna go out, if something happens and I can't proceed with this patient, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work on another patient. Or I have all of this other stuff that I'm swamped by, I'm gonna go do it. You don't feel the weight, but your patient does. For that patient, flow has stopped in that process. They are no longer proceeding down that value stream of getting care. Whether it's waiting for an order, waiting for a response from somebody, that flow for that patient has stopped. We don't feel it though, because we're gonna keep this. Non-utilized human talent, that's not using us to the best of our abilities, right? Some people talk about working to the top of your license. I also like to say, yes, that's true. We want to use our resources wisely and work to the top of our license when possible, but we don't want to just use you for your hands to do the work. This is about engaging your minds and your hearts about how do we improve the work? How do we make these processes better? Because it's going to make for a smoother day for me, a smoother day for my patient, a smoother day for us as a system. Transportation, moving patients, products, or equipment or materials from place to place. Sometimes it's because I need 2 pieces of equipment, but I only have one, so I'm going to store this over here. So Meanwhile, this unit over here has to continually go and move this thing around, and then, hey, I need this thing, oh, somebody else is using it, which causes waiting. So all of this having to go get stuff doesn't make you efficient. Do you need what you need, when you need it, where you need it? That's how you're gonna add value. The searching for stuff, the going and gathering stuff, that's not value added. That's not using you to the best of your ability and allowing you to add value to the process. So we need to critically look at things like transportation, having to go get stuff. And how do I arrange my workspace where I can do less of that? Inventory. We talk about point of use in inventory. Having what I need, where I need it, when I need it, means it needs to be right there by the patient where I need to do that service. The problem is you need a lot of stuff. So if you store something, one item, too much of one item, that means everything else gets farther and farther away, which causes you to have to walk farther and farther to go get it, which is the motion. It's your walking around, going to gather this, going over there, because the printer is, we only have one printer and it's over there, and so everybody that's over in this periphery is having to walk multiple trips every day to go get this piece of paper. It's not making the process efficient. It's not making you efficient. One of the things that I'd like to say with this one is think about not just the physical motion of walking, but the electronic motion of how many screens does it take you to find a piece of information that you need to do the process? How many clicks does it take you to get something? If we can work on those processes to minimize the number of clicks and the number of screens you need to go to find the information that you need, that's going to make you more efficient. So think about not just the physical walking around and stuff, but the electronic motion as well. And then excess or extra processing. This is wasted time and talent due to inefficient processes or inadequate training, filling out in multiple forms. We don't do that, do we? Not only is it redundant and a waste, we need it done once, right? We should ask those questions once, but how do we feed all those answers to all the different parties that need it versus everybody asking the same question? Because not only is it a waste of time, but it looks like we don't communicate with each other. So those are the 8 types of waste. And what the hope of this is to have an army of people no longer just looking at the work as this is how the work has always been done, but starting to look at the work as, is this task the way I do it today the most efficient way to do this? Or is there waste in this process? In which case, can we build a better process to remove this waste, which is going to make us all more efficient, make our days a little bit easier? Because I guarantee you, the only way we're going to get out of the situation of being overwhelmed and swamped is to slowly but surely start picking these things off one at a time, making it a little bit better every day. There isn't a magic pill or a magic solution out there that's going to fix our problems. It's focusing on each individual problem. How do we make it a little bit better for us? So we have an exercise that we call a waste walk. And you can do this by looking at a physical area. You can just sit in the unit, observe, or you can walk through a process, follow a patient through a process. But you fill out, there's a form, I don't think it's on here, but there's a form that you fill out. You're just documenting all the waste that you see. During a waste walk, you're not trying to solve the problem. You're trying to understand how the work is done. So there's a couple of key things that you need to do though. First, you need to let the person you're observing know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Otherwise, they're going to think that you're critiquing them and you're judging how they're doing the work. And that's not the case. We're not critiquing people in waste walk. We're not judging people. We just want to see all the stuff that gets in everybody's way. We're really hyper-focused on the process. So making sure that when you're observing, they know that. Then you go and you observe the process and you document this stuff down, right? Then You validate it with the person you are observing. Is this how it's done? Did I capture this right? Because you might have caught them on a good day and be like, well, this is a good day. Usually I have to do this, 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 and this. Well, you need this, this, and this, and this to really understand how the work is done. So that validation not only helps with them getting buy-in, but this is part of change management, but it's also making sure that you're really honestly seeing the process for how it's done. And then you use these ways, you prioritize these ways and say, how do we start getting better at our work? And this is where the improvement hub, so it's not a different tool, this is how you get engaged in the improvement huddles around, here are the ways I see, here's my idea to improve it. The reason why we as a system wanted to get out to everybody and show this is because we need everybody looking with a different lens of hypercritically looking at, am what I'm doing, is what I am doing value added or non-value added, and what are my ideas? Because you're the experts. You're the ones living and breathing these processes every single day. You know where all the problems are, and you probably have the best ideas of how to get rid of them. So this is our attempt to help empower you to help make your days better for yourselves, for your patients, and ultimately that will help us as a system. So that's the training. Any questions? Does it make sense? As I was going through the waste, were you starting to go through your head of, oh yeah, I do this, this, and this, and starting to make the connection of that's waste, right? So now it's how do you, as BPC, work together to start removing some of these things, because each waste that you remove is going to make your day just a little bit better, your week just a little bit better, a little bit less chaotic, and that's how we slowly but surely start to get to where we're not drowning, we might just be swimming. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, I will give it back to you.
Thank you so much. All right, so our next speaker is Jessie Marceau, and she's coming to talk to us about Care Patrol. And this is about working with patients who were having a tough time getting out of the hospital. And we'll let Jessie take it away.
Thank you. Hi guys. Some brochures up here. Feel free to grab as many as you'd like. So my name is Jessie. I'm the owner of a local company called Care Patrol. Care Patrol is a franchise. We've been around for 30 years. We are the largest, longest senior placement agency. Care Patrol was started 30 years ago in '93 by Chuck and Becky Giovanni. They still are the owners of the franchise today. They live in Arizona. Chuck was a hospital discharge planner, discharging people. He was a social worker out of the hospital, just like he did every day. And he had to do a follow-up with a patient that he discharged, and he placed somebody in memory care that was totally not appropriate for memory care, but it was just a busy day. He got him out the door. So he said, he slowed down and he said, there's got to be a way to discharge people, patients out of hospital settings more appropriately. So he came up with the idea of combining that discharge social worker with a realtor. And born was Care Patrol. So there's 200, give or take, franchises all around the US, all individually owned. And that's essentially what we do. So we have a very clinical model. So primary care physicians, hospitals, skilled nursing facilities. We help facilitate a discharge when a patient needs to go to long-term care. So assisted living, independent living, memory care, in-home care. We can't legally work with anything that an entity that gets paid by Medicare. So hospice, we have knowledge of it, but that's as far as we can go with it. Things like that. So who can guess? I have a prize for you. How many long-term care options there are just in Brown County? You need to discharge your patient. How many options do you have to choose from?
40.
72. So there's 72 options in just Brown County alone. So somebody that's not in this industry, that needs to help their mom, dad, loved one, whoever it is, find a long-term care option, and they get a list of 72, how in the world are they supposed to know the difference between skilled nursing and independent living and, you know, home care, medical, non-medical, what, you know, they're not gonna have any idea what that means. So that's exactly what we do. So we have an office in Green Bay. It's myself and then Bobby Joe. She's a senior care advisor. We're both certified senior care advisors. And what we do all day long is we meet with clients and that need education and guidance on what long-term care option for them is most appropriate. So we have three, we do like a care discovery with them, wherever they are, whether they're sitting in the ER or they're at home planning for their future. And we go through three aspects: clinically, what's going on today, what's going on that you called us, a little bit of health history, personal preferences, who are you as a person, how many kids do you have, what side of town do you want, those types of things, and then finances. We don't need proof of anything, but tell us what we're working with so we make an appropriate recommendation. Once we know those three things, then the team has full knowledge on, our wheels are already spinning as we're talking to these people. We're going to know exactly what's going to be appropriate for them, who has availability. If anybody have a state survey history out there, great staff right now, maybe turnover in management that we should, all that, the ins and outs of the assisted livings. And I should just narrow it down to assisted living, long-term care options. And we make recommendations to them. So after we have that conversation of learning those three things, then we educate them on what the most appropriate and safest option for them is. If it is assisted living, then we tour. That's where the realtor aspect comes in. We schedule the tours for them. We go on the tours with them, just like you would find a realtor to find you a home. We do the exact same thing. We make sure they're asking the right questions and that it's the safest place for them. And we do all that good stuff at no cost. It's a totally free service for our clients to utilize us. That's actually what drew me to Care Patrol. I can kind of talk about my background in a minute, but totally free for anybody to refer to us, and it's totally free for the families, patients, clients that we're working with. How do we get paid? We are for profit. We're not a nonprofit. Once we make that match, once we place a client or patient that we're working with, it's kind of like a finder's fee. That community or that long-term care facility or whoever it is compensates Care Patrol. So very similar to a realtor. You're behind the scenes, you pay what, 6% to your realtor when you buy a house or whatever it is. Kind of that same model. So that's Care Patrol as a company. We've been in the Green Bay area for 2 years. I'm born and raised in West of here. Started to go to school to be a nurse, and I was almost done. I was like, I don't want to work nights and weekends. What am I doing? But I loved that, like healthcare, nursing. I loved that. So I talked to my guidance counselor, and it's basically said that, and they steered me towards nursing home administrator. So that's how I finished my degree. Became a nursing home administrator, got my first job out of college. I was super excited, got into a nursing home, saw what a nursing home administrator does, and never became a nursing home administrator. I got into sales. So healthcare sales, basically. So I did admissions. The majority of my career so far has been nursing home admissions. So that's kind of the background. I'm from Depew. I've got 2 little kids. They're 2 and 4. Married a Uber. What else can I tell you? Bobby Joe, she's amazing. She's our senior care advisor. Her background is, I really wish she could have came today. You guys would have really liked her. She's got a really cool background. She came from, when people come out of, the younger kids come out of like juvie or jail, even prison. I think she did adults. She helps them get back into the world. So that's her background. And then her dad had cancer and died very quickly, unexpectedly. And she saw healthcare. She got a glimpse of hospice and nursing home, and totally changed her path. And she was worked at a memory care community for like a few years. And so between the two of us, we work with all the clients. We kind of take team each client, my expertise and then her expertise and knowledge. And so we work with clients from straight out of the ER, help find them resources and get them out of the ER within the hour. And we have clients that are like, I've heard about you. Let's talk. Maybe in 5 years, I want to move. So, and everything in between. What questions do you guys have?
What would differentiate between like somebody that, if a family would say, hey, I need some help deciphering some of this information, when would we refer to you versus ADRC?
That's a good question. We work very closely with the ADRC. So we are for-profit. So the clients, patients that we work with have to have the resources or the funds to pay for the service they need. So if anybody's on Medicaid, we can help them and we get paid for it. But we have the knowledge of, they have Medicaid. I've heard that so-and-so has availability and could probably take them. So we have that knowledge. So anybody that is low funds, like they just don't have the means to pay for long-term care, those are the experts at the ADRC. I know like just enough to be dangerous about Medicaid and all that, and spend down and that kind of stuff. That's ADRC. We work very closely with the ADRC. Heather is the dementia care specialist over there, and we actually co-chair the Dementia Community Coalition in Brown County together. So we take team a lot. She doesn't have the capacity in her position to tour, so that's probably the biggest, and the hand-holding. They do a great job of the education piece, and then they just don't have the capacity to go door to door with these people. And then the follow through, I should say. So after we do have someone move into a long-term care facility, I always tell families I work with, they're not getting rid of me. I see them all the time. We follow up with them, making sure it's still a good fit on both ends. So that can answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. When we have somebody in the hospital that we are trying to place and having difficulties, on average, how quickly can you get someone placed?
It depends on the need. Like I said, we go in the ER, and if it's just your straightforward, cute little 85-year-old that fell and just can't go home because she broke her arm and uses a wheelchair or a walker, I can find a solution in 30 minutes. If it's behavioral, probably here in this setting, or what else? What other really good red flags? Not ambulatory. Things like that, I'll be able to help. I just can't promise it's going to be in 30 minutes. So just knowing that acuity and who can accept what is the knowledge I have. So it's totally case by case. It totally depends on what's going on and what's going on with them. But I can almost always, I don't think I've ever not been able to help someone.
Can I add 2 cents to that? So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jody Weiss. I'm the team leader for case management over at the hospital. We've been utilizing the services of Care Patrol for several months now, and really have found that the cool thing about Care Patrol is their ability to, if they don't have an immediate solution, they will help with even that interim. You know what I mean? So a family is willing to pay for 24 hours of respite service until we can get home care in the house, and you know what I mean, those kind of things. So some of that management perspective or from anyone's perspective, it's like, ugh, how do I put all those pieces together? And that's kind of the cool thing about these guys is like they do that all day long. And so, you know, even if it's a circumstance where you're not sure, it's kind of looking a little iffy, doesn't hurt to call them and give them a heads up, and they can kind of peek in. We're kind of, I know they will never have access to your records, but we are working on getting them access to Epic. But they may ask for information to follow up with patients. So let's say a family's not ready right now, but they do want information in the future. That's why Jessie has brought some of the Care Patrol information. Feel free to give it to patients. It's got her contact information on there. It's got a fax number. We do even have record release. So if someone says, yeah, you know what, send my information over to Jessie and have her give me a call. We can do that too. So we found that it really has helped to decrease the length of stay in the hospital when we have engaged Care Patrol to help us. ER, they are doing some very recent work out of the ER that has been super successful. So patients that don't have an admission diagnosis, they really shouldn't be admitted to the hospital. But family says, I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? I'm done. We are like, okay, Jessie will contact you within the hour of you getting home. And they're like, yeah, okay, and she does. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic, this is amazing. So, my point is, even when it's questionable, utilize it, and you know what, she'll tell you if their hands are tied. But if in fact they can help, they will do so in any way. So, feel free to take some of the information. We'll leave all of those here, so that if you know, whether it's personal, seriously, whether you have a family member at home that you're thinking about this, or patients here, please utilize their services. I always have to tell my story. Speaking of personal experience, my mother's aunt fell, broke her hip, was living independently, recognized that she was not going to be able to go independently and needed assisted living. Called upon Care Patrol. They came and they found a place for her to go within, at her discharge from her rehab in her surgery of breaking her hip. And the coolest thing about it was my mom's cousin who said, "You're never going to guess what? They moved mom," and she called me. She actually reached out and called me to see how I was doing and how I was feeling about this whole move, and how, you know, did everything fall into place the way I had hoped it would. And so some of that customer service part, super important too, that you'll get from these guys. And I sound like I should be their commercial, but sorry, yeah, we should
record that.
But the point being, you know, seeing all of these circumstances in the hospital, I feel like I've seen them all. This is just one really fantastic solution that I feel like we really need to utilize. So if you have any questions, you ask me, you ask Diane, you ask Jessie, and like I said, her contact information is there, so feel free to reach out.
I have a question for more so like PC focus. So if we do have a patient where we feel like this could be a good idea, I'm assuming it'd be probably case management driven. So just, you know, I don't want obviously a bunch of people to be calling Care Patrol. So I'm assuming just have to coordinate or touch base with the case manager of the patient, and they probably already thought of it and are probably already on it, but then it's at least like starting there, I would assume.
It never hurts for you to reach out and say,
Yeah.
this is what we're thinking.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One avenue that I haven't touched yet, but I have a business development guy starting in January, and I can't wait. But the first thing on his agenda is group homes. We also do group homes too. I just haven't even gotten there yet. The other avenues are keeping me too busy. So that will be coming too. So, any other questions? No? Cool.
Sounds
Thank
like
you guys.
such a
Thank you.
needed-
Yeah.
So thank you to Jessie. Now we're going to move on to our patient voice. And I'm going to let Anna start to tell you about it.
Yeah.
So to start, I want to definitely thank everybody for all of the work that you're doing. Working in the IOP program for as long as I have, we have had so many people come through that program from inpatient saying the hospital saved my life, and talking to other patients that are kind of on the fence. I don't know if I should go into the hospital, and they're like, no, go. It's such a positive experience. So thank you, thank you, thank you for saving people's lives. We're here. That's sad. No service is 100% perfect, and I think sometimes people's expectations when they come into the hospital are different than what the reality is, right? Like sometimes I think people think acute inpatient care is going to be more comparable to like residential treatment, where they're going to really dive into a lot of things and their whole life will change. And so if they have us on kind of this pedestal and then we don't quite meet all of those expectations, there's a long way to tumble. We had one patient that came in recently, and I had a chance to talk to her. We had a chance to talk to her, and really nice woman, very, very nice,
Very articulate.
appreciative of her services kind of woman. And she highlighted some experience that weren't really up to what her expectation would be. And as we were listening, we're like, those are probably some things that we could maybe do a little bit better. And so we thought we would bring those to the team here, just so that everybody has some awareness, just as a reminder of these are things that people are noticing, just so that we can make some changes maybe.
So I'm going to share with you what some of her concerns and observations were, and I'm going to kind of say the same thing as Pam. These are her interpretations. So does that mean that's exactly how things rolled out? Probably not. We understand she was coming in not in the best place in her life. So, I think everything that you see is clouded by that when you come in here. But it came down to just about 6 or 7 concerns that she shared. And I just want to share to bring some awareness. The first one actually doesn't have to do with us, but and I'm going to share it just because I want you to understand where she was at. She said, I waited for a year for outpatient services and I never got them. So she came in here feeling like it was her last resort. Now I will tell you that Pam and I really did a deep dive in her chart. That wasn't quite accurate. She had had several appointments that she had canceled. She had been set up with one therapist and that wasn't a good fit for her. She had been set with another therapist and her insurance changed, so she had to switch. So while yes, she probably was feeling like she wasn't getting consistent therapy, she was getting some therapy. She just, it wasn't flowing the way she wanted it to. She says that when she came in, she was told we would have tons of one-on-one therapy because she doesn't like group therapy. Well, that was their interpretation of things. And she said, I got absolutely no one-to-one therapy while I was here. Except for the doctor. She said she did spend one-to-one time with the resident, not the doctor, the resident. I will tell you, she was only here for a day and a half, and I looked and saw at least 4 places where she had one-on-one therapy, both with nurses, with Pam, with the doctors. So, but that was her expectation. I think that the message was, I had these expectations. I thought I shared those right away up front, and they weren't met. She didn't find the group sessions helpful, so she did attend the group sessions. But I'll tell you what her feedback was, and probably accurate. The person who was doing group was pretty tentative and didn't seem to understand the material. I think it was one of our new BHSs, and yeah, probably pretty nervous doing their first groups. But I think that really, she struggled with that, because she said, I had to jump in because people weren't understanding what the person was saying, and I tried to make it better for everyone else. So just to be aware that, go in when you're gonna teach people, be knowledgeable of what you're gonna teach, and try to come across as confident and share that knowledge so that people can trust what you're saying. I'm sure the information that she got was accurate and good. It just, she didn't feel that way because it wasn't presented in a way that was confident. there was too much free time. And when she talked to staff about that, she was told there would be more programming during the week and that she should stay beyond the weekend because then she'd get the really good programming. Well, I don't know, Pam.
I hope that that was a misconception of something that she heard, but if that was, maybe we want to send a different message.
So,
Although if you think, like if you are the person that said that, or if you've heard, or if you've thought that, maybe let us know. Like if you actually think that our programming during the week is better than on the weekends, let us know that so we can try to fix that. Because it shouldn't be, right? I think it should be the same. We get charged the same.
There is some concerns about meal, and I won't get into that. The biggest issue she had with, there was a mistake with her meal. The biggest issue she had is that several people said to her, well, yeah, I don't work in the kitchen, that's not my fault. And even if they didn't use those specific words, that's what she took from it. Like nobody just stepped up and said, what can I do to make it better? And she didn't point fingers, she just said, that was the message she got, is, yep, can't fix it, it's not my fault. And we don't wanna, we all know that there are days when each of us doesn't quite rise up to what we wanna do for our patients. And if a patient complains about how I've done something, I really want you, first of all, to come to me and say, hey, what can we do to fix this? But let's lift each other up. We don't want to say, oh, the kitchen, that's all their fault. We want to say, boy, we're sorry that happened. Let's see what we can do to make it better. We don't want to throw blame on anybody. We just want to say, what can we do to make it better? That's, and I always think it never hurts to apologize. And I don't think you're apologizing that you did anything wrong. You're apologizing that they had a poor experience, and you're sorry about that. We're sorry you had a poor experience. What can I do to make it better? This is one that was pretty specific. One of the patients got COVID while she was here, and the staff asked all of the patients to mask. And she said there were patients who were crabby about this. She said, I don't get that. I didn't want to bring COVID home to my family. I masked, no problem. But what she did say is, I was concerned that some of the nurses weren't masking. They might have masked out with the patients, but then they went in the nurses' station and took them off. And she's like, you're no less vulnerable inside the door than you were outside the door. Why aren't we all masking the same? And she said, and nurses were pulling their masks and wearing them under their nose. That's not good masking technique. We all know, masks have to be over your nose, over your mouth. So she felt like she was doing what she could do to keep her family safe and go out here not getting COVID, even though it was in the hospital. But she felt like not everyone was. And she said, I get the patients. They were dealing with all kinds of issues, but she would hope that the staff would be more appropriate with their masking. There were concerns about her med reconciliation, and this is not my forte because, I don't do this. I know med reconciliation is complicated and difficult, and it has a lot of aspects to it. What I do know is she said, at home, I take my bedtime medicines all at 7 o'clock. And so she said, I told my nurse first thing in the morning, just so you know, I take all my bedtime meds at 7. The nurse said, yep, got it. And then she told the person who did her H&P, I take all my meds at 7. And that one said, yep, I got it. And then she said, I felt like they really didn't listen, so I wrote it all down and handed it to my nurse and said, these are the meds I get at 7. And again, got a yes, you bet. And then at 7 o'clock, they brought out 2 medications, gave them to her, and she said, where are the rest of mine? And they said, oh, those aren't scheduled till 9. She said, but at home I take them all at 7. And they said, well, you should have told your doctor that. Well, she told 3 or 4 people. So she expected that would have been passed on to whoever it needed to be passed on to. so that she would get them. I will say that the nurse who was working with her, and I have no idea who it is, said, I can give you them early, but I'm gonna have to note that in your chart that we gave them to you early. That's fine, but you know, it didn't matter to her if it got noted in the chart or not. So it's another one of those, you know, an apology, you're right, I'm sorry, I see you wanted them all at the same time. Even if you have to behind the scenes make a note in the chart, yep, we can do that, but we wanna respect what our patients are saying. And if we can't, if, you know, if the doctor said, I want these at 9, then, you know, an explanation so that they understand why. The one thing I will tell you is, this lady didn't say everything here was horrible. She said there were little things that could be done to make my experience better. So, and I think that's why we talked about sharing this, is we don't want it to sound like she had the worst experience of her life. I don't think she did. I think she had really different expectations of what this was, but she had some criticisms that I think are something we can all just listen to and say, yeah, that might be accurate and that might be something I can do better going forward.
Diane, do you sometimes have, I don't know the whole process, or are there some patients who once they're discharged kind of reach out and say, I would like to talk to someone? Is that kind of, okay.
That's exactly what happened here.
Okay.
And actually, I think when she left, she didn't want to reach out. Her husband reached out and said, I just want you to know, my wife did not have the experience she expected. So I reached out to her to say, hey, I'd like to hear your feedback. And she talked to me, and she talked to Pam, and she came back and said, you know what? I really want to come and meet with you in person. And that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, we try to respect that because, you know, we want to be open to hearing what people have to say. And when she came in, she wasn't angry, she wasn't upset. She was just saying, this is things I want to share with you because I think you have a good place here, but you could do a little better. And these are some suggestions for you. And that really was her attitude when she met with us. So.
She said her experience with intake was phenomenal. She said they helped her feel so comfortable coming into the hospital. They answered all of her questions. She said that she had some individual interactions with staff on the unit that were really helpful and reassuring.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she definitely wasn't like a complainer, but somebody that took a long time to kind of get to that point of making that big decision to come into the hospital. And then once she's here, she's like, you know, it just could have been a little bit better. So,
and really, when I talked to her and I said, what do you want to happen with this? And she said, I want you guys to have the opportunity to make things better. So that's what we're doing. All right, any questions? Okay.
and thank you again for the phenomenal work that you do, because rarely do these kind of comments come in.
No.
So it's usually a ton of positive, including from her.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, thank you.
My eyesight is poor, and I apologize. So typically at our team meetings, we just like to do a little review of our average daily census and what is kind of trending at. So the color that you can't see the greatest, the really light blue, is 2022. The little bit darker blue is 2023, and then the darkest blue is 2024. This is fiscal year, so that's why it shows data for 2024. Technically, we are in fiscal year 2024. It starts in October. So for the darkest blue line, you'll see October, November, and then where we're trending right now in December, are we right at 25? So right now, we are right at 25 for December. Our average daily census goal is 27. So we trended out over the whole fiscal year. We know that in December we get low during the holidays. That's nothing new. We know that we get lower in summer. That's nothing new. So our whole overall yearly goal is 27. So we haven't hit our target quite yet so far for how we're trending, but we're gonna just continue to look at it. So this is the nice little graph that we like to show to kind of show where we're at. I'm just gonna keep standing right here. So next is the staffing update. So I usually put this slide in just so everyone can kind of see how our hiring and recruiting process is going. As you all know, we've had a lot of new hires in the last few months. So there's actually significantly less positions open now than what was shared 3 months ago at the team meeting. I'm not going to go through all of these word for word, but just some kind of key things here. So child adolescent unit, right now we don't have any open RN positions. Carla did share that she will be going to IOP again, so her position may be coming soon, but otherwise at this point we don't really have any openings over there. SNT positions on both sides, a couple nursing positions on adult unit, and then support staff. You can see we don't have many. For a while we had a lot, and again we have a lot of new employees with us, which we're super appreciative for. So there's not a whole lot of open support staff positions. I want to say 2 of the adult CNA positions are night shift, or at least one of them is. So we're still looking to kind of fill some of our night shift gaps with that too. That's how that looks. And then for intake, many of you know we've come a long way in intake over the last year. At one point we had 2 nurses in that department total to staff it 24/7. So a lot of us kind of helped fill those gaps, so it's exciting to see. For intake, we only have 1 nursing position, and it's part-time. I think it's a 0.4. And then we do have a couple intake specialist positions. So it's nice to see. It's much different than what we looked like a year ago. And then my little plug with intake specialists, we are always looking for people to cross-train as an intake specialist. So if you're a BHS and you have some experience under your belt and you're interested in learning more, or even just shadowing, see what it's like, we did choose to cross-train all of our intake specialists to the unit so they can help when the unit is short. So reversely, it's nice to be able to cross-train some of our BHSs to intake if needed. So if anyone's interested in that, just let us know. And nurses too. So we cross-trained all of our charge nurses, but we're open to that too. This is Marina's slide. Marina couldn't be here today, so we have a lot of new staff, like we said. So I'm not going to go name by name, but this just kind of puts it into perspective. These are all of our new hires since our last team meeting 3 months ago. So in the last 3 months, these are all the people that we ended up recruiting, which is extremely exciting. Reversely, then it also means that a lot of you have probably been doing a lot of precepting. So thank you for that. We know precepting new employees takes time. And then we also know that we have some of our newer employees sometimes training some of our new hires, which we don't love, and we don't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position. But basically, thank you. We got through kind of the big push. And so now we don't have any open positions right now, so hopefully it'll be a little less of a burden. Not that our new hires are a burden, but less of a burden when it comes to like the precepting and all the different pieces that go into that. So lots of new people, and we're excited. All right, Trinity is going to join me. I'll give a little spiel and then I'm going to turn it over to her. So we heard kind of from multiple groups, the therapy group, our unit staff, that having some set schedules would be really nice. We found, I know Rick was talking about waste, and it was kind of a lot of wasted time coordinating in the mornings or coordinating what time should we do this, what time should we do that. When pre-COVID, we had set schedules, and then COVID hit and everything just kind of changed. So a big initiative was to get back to kind of some more set scheduling. So everyone comes in for the day, they can look and see exactly what they have going on. We have a little bit of it on the units. It's not that you guys are going all willy willy-nilly and have no sort of schedule at all right now, but this at least helps everybody make sure that we're all on the same page. It was reviewed with the OT staff, the therapy staff, the BHSs, the TFs. We wanted to make sure that every area was kind of looking at it to make sure it makes sense. So I'll turn it over to Trinity. She's going to be kind of our go-to person for rolling it out, but we're super excited.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it already.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. The VHS are all up to date on this too, so if you are having any questions too, they should feel comfortable with it, or me as you've mentioned too. Important to note with these schedules too is a lot of it does stay the same, but also keep in mind it is modified based on staffing. So say if our support staff doesn't look great that day, totally take into consideration how this looks. You might not be able to compensate for everything that's on there. So just keep that in mind. But it touches on a lot of really great things like, of course, OT, group, learning labs, pet therapies at a standard time. That's always on there for everybody to know. Mindful movements, journaling time that OT's been providing. There's so many great things that are on there that are more specific. I think even some great stuff on our highlight is like hygiene time for the kids in the morning and at night too. Things that are specific that gets people just in the mentality of just looking at it and then comfortable practicing and doing it too. So you can take a look at those. They are up on the units. They do go into effect January 1st pretty much.
Yeah.
Anytime we want to start to roll them out, everyone's on the same page with it. But they're on the units now, so you'll see them. They're all posted and everything. Then we're also just adding new programming activity, relaxation time. VHS are all up to date with this too, but basically it looks like different activities that they can do that are relaxing or wind them down for the night. Some sort of way for them to get ready for bed and have a good, healthy night schedule.
I do want to point out, shout out lesson staff, take a close look at it, as our morning, and I'm working on updating the folders that we provide patients and parents. But the morning phone time has changed just a bit. We actually want them to talk on the phone and then have it end, and then have shower time before group therapy. So that way they actually need a shower, and they'll say, oh, I'd rather just talk on the phone than take a shower today. So just make note of that.
And yeah, so like Alex said, she's working on updating the folders, so whenever they're updated, we'll make sure that it's communicated, but just know there might be a time period where our unit schedule says this, but the parents are getting this, so just make sure we're really spelling that out. The process with updating the rules is, it's not just updating like a Word document and printing it. Alex has to go to a committee and like present our changes, and like it's this whole process. So although we would love for it to just be like change the numbers and send it on, there's more of a process to it than that. So there might be a little bit of a time where it's like that in between, but
I found out today that it's January 9th we need to present it to that committee, so it'll be after that. Child unit, well, so a while ago, we submitted the adolescent one, and I found out we had to go to all the committees and stuff for this. So child unit is still a Word document, so child unit will be updated before adolescent unit.
perfect.
Any questions?
Civilitas, you don't have to open the video. So we like to go through Civilitas every meeting. I'm not even going to try to play the audio. I know the audio is awful in here, and a lot of times it's super quiet. So we'll send it out with the meeting minutes, and I encourage you guys to take a listen to the video. It talks about crucial conversations and like those high stakes situations or discussions that you have to have with each other. It talks about what to think of when you have to have these conversations. There's two things at the bottom. Find out and focus on what you and the other party truly want. Think and rather than either or. So like if you have to have a conversation with someone and you're trying to come up with a new game plan or whatever it may be, don't just be, it's my way or your way. Maybe we can kind of meet in the middle or do things more together. So that's the topic. About crucial conversations, so it'll be sent out. And then as a side note, I mentioned the audio is awful in here, so as part of our gym redesign, we are looking at some different audio options for meetings, because typically when we play it, like I sit in the front row and sometimes I can't hear it the best, so just know that we're working on it. We know the gym isn't like the best setup for meetings, but we're aware, and hopefully that'll be part of some of our improvement work with the gym. Audio issues will hopefully be short-lived, but that'll be sent out. Oh, my slides are right in a row. Infection prevention. Christine could not be here today, so I'm covering this slide for her as well. As you guys all know, we recently had to put some patients 2 or 3 separate times recently on modified quarantine due to some exposures. So just wanted to put a little reminder out there. The protocol is the small letters on the bottom left. So it spells out visiting, when we do testing. One thing that it says is that they have to be in single patient rooms, but know that we can room modified quarantine patients together if needed. So that's something that we did get approval by through infection prevention. So that is all on there. We're supposed to symptom check minimum twice daily, but if you think about it, we meet with our patients so often throughout the day, and we do the one-to-ones at a minimum. So really, if they were to have symptom development, it would come out during then. So, just be mindful of if they sound a little different or, maybe sound a little sniffly. Just keep tabs on that. And then eating in their room, masking, all that stuff. So, all of that is in like a protocol. We have one. If you go to Julius and type in modified quarantine, that's how I found it so quickly. It finds it, and then you can pull up the actual document if you have any questions. And then just a couple reminders for signage. So when we have someone who tests positive for COVID, or we're even like ruling it out, just remember to communicate as much as you can. We have the different signs that we hang on the nurses' station doors, and then the little color-coded door tags for the patient rooms. So we did just educate our EBS team and our facilities teams, just as a reminder of like, if you see a little card on a door, pause and make sure you go talk to somebody. We did ask them, just kind of as a standard, to check in with the nursing staff anyway before entering the patient room. It's just good practice. Even if they don't have COVID, maybe they have something else, or maybe we're just like suspicious, or they have a new onset fever. So maybe there's no signage up yet, but maybe we are like, hey, maybe put a mask on, or maybe come back in an hour or two once we know if they're positive, or etc. So we did ask them to check in with the nursing staff prior to going out on the units. So if you suddenly notice that they're checking in with you more frequently, that's why we asked them to. But then reversely, don't hesitate to share with them. If you see Jeff walking down the hallway, maybe say, hey, just so you know, we're testing someone on the adult unit. It can be a short, sweet thing. It doesn't need to be this big thing, but then at least there's awareness of it. So when in doubt, over communicate. That goes with everybody. Our OT therapy, case managers, business office. We have a lot of people that kind of interact with our patients throughout the day, so it's just good to remember and be mindful of that. And then there is some rumblings, I guess is the right word, like, is mandatory masking coming back? So we did hear that, I believe it's Aurora, did go back to mandated masking. So at my nursing leadership meeting yesterday or the day before, we did kind of ask, like, what does that mean for us type of thing. So our infection prevention team leader shared that a lot of the masking discussions in other hospitals are due to internal exposures and transmissions among staff. Luckily, right now we're not seeing that at Bellin, which means that we're doing a good job of staying home when we're sick, masking if we don't feel good, being mindful of our symptoms, that kind of thing. So I talked to Andy, she's our team leader of infection prevention, and she said that we're just gonna keep an eye on it and continue to do our process. So with that being said, still call employee health. We always direct you to employee health, and Andy said, I know it's kind of a pain and not the most liked thing, but clearly it's working because they're the ones that are giving direction on if you should come to work or not. I know we used to all just come to work with a cold, and that was like the old days, but now that's not so much the case. So if you hear any rumblings, there's nothing about it now, but we're keeping tabs on it. If there's a huge exposure tomorrow, that could change. I don't want to give any false hope or anything like that, mindful of your symptoms. If you're not feeling well, make sure you're listening to that and speaking up about it. Patients, if there's patients with symptoms, make sure we're following our protocols. Right now, Bellin is doing a good job with not having transmission in the hospital. So let's try to keep it that way. And then this is the last part of this. Christine took pictures of the signs. So they are a little bit updated now. They are going to show exactly what's needed. So it's contact precaution. Here's what you should have on. If it's droplet, here's what you should have. Contact plus. So the signs are just tweaked a little bit. So she took that picture of all of them just to be able to show what they look like. So these are the ones that'll be on the nurses station doors. And she was just going to go through too and make sure all of our signage are up to date.
Quick question. So
Yep.
the protocol for modified quarantine, who needs to be responsible to put in the orders for the day 3 and 5 PCR? Is that going to be the infection prevention team? Is that
That'd be us. Yeah. Do we know? I was off the day that
Katie put them in the
Katie
last
did 'em?
time.
Okay.
I worked with Andy for the protocol, Katie took
Okay.
them, so we worked and tried to make sure everybody's
Okay, yeah, so it does ultimately fall to us, so that's a great question. Yeah, the most recent time we had to do it, I was off, and I know, if anybody in intake, if you guys are really busy on the unit and it happens, feel free to ask intake. If they're available, they could plug them in, or if there's any leaders on site, we're happy to help too. Great question. And we almost could make a modified quarantine order. Yeah, that might, then it's easy instead of putting it in that way. Me again, improved communication with Vina. So this is just a little plug that we went live with Vina on December 11th. So just make sure you let us know how it's going, what's working well, what could be better. If there's any issues, we do have issue logs on the units and an intake. So even if it's something that you might think is simple or oh, that's not that big of a deal, if it frustrated you or made it a barrier for you in your work, write it down, because we want to be successful with this. So a lot of those little things, even if it takes 3 seconds to load and you had to click multiple times, it kind of glitched or froze, write that down. And then be as specific as possible. So I was standing in the front corner of the gym. I tried to message Danielle and it froze, whatever. Just try to be as specific as possible, because then they can look into that specific issue and try to resolve it.
Alright, so this is me again. So I just wanted to show you, this was our survey from through October for Net Promoter Score. We had a big drop in October. I'm not quite sure why that is. I will tell you that our November scores popped right back up. So we're trending in the right way right now. We do know that in October we only had 26 people who responded, but of those only 5 gave us a 9 or a 10. So there's a chunk of people who weren't real happy with us in October's, at least the ones who responded to our survey. So just want you to be aware of that. When I looked at all the comments and all the areas where we're scoring well and not scoring well, I can tell you that the one thing that is most important to our patients is that we listen to them and that they feel that we respect them. So, if we don't get everything right, that's fine, but let's listen to them and let's treat them with respect. If we do those 2 things, I think everything else kind of falls into place behind it. We want them to get the best care here. So if the best care, especially where we work, the best care is really just taking the time to listen to them. And I wondered if October we got so busy that, and that's a surprise. That was a big jump for us. We hadn't been that busy in quite a while. So I think it needs us to look real busy and not looking like we're taking the time to listen. I think that'll help. Just so all of you know, I also have a new process where if your name is mentioned in a survey, you will get a candy bar with a little note of what was said about you. And I know a few people on the unit have already gotten them, so, you know, just be aware that that's gonna happen too. We wanna acknowledge all the good comments we get, and we do get a lot of good comments. And they're fun to read, just about how well people listen to them and how much they like the people who treat them well, so. That's all I have on that.
So I was asked to come and talk about a opioid detox trial that we're gonna be doing. So we all know that there is a need for, patients, to be treated for opiate withdrawal, in the community. Historically, we have not done this as a primary, admission diagnosis. We do know that our Medicaid population is currently not covered, but it's very vague in what is covered from our commercial population. So we are going to be trialing 5 patients starting on December 27th. We'll be working specifically with our emergency department. They actually see quite a decent amount of patients that come in with the primary reason of opiate use. So we've worked with Dr. Calfat. She will be the provider that will be attending for all of these patients. We'll be working directly with Ann Van Linden as the case manager in the emergency department, and then they will be working directly with one of the nursing leaders, myself, Jenny, or one of the TFs, on the admission process and making sure that they're a candidate for our trial. And then what we are going to be doing is following their cases through the billing process to see if they're covered by their insurance. We do know, like I said, that it's not covered by Medicaid. However, we are in talks with Brown County about possible funding for some of these patients in the future. So just wanting to make you aware, as far as those of you on the units, we're going to take care of them the same way we take care of patients when it's a secondary problem that they have when they come in. We're going to be using the COWS assessments, clonidine protocols, and Dr. Calfat is prepared to be making some adjustments along the way. And we will learn from these 5 patients. We do not have a specific order set built for this or anything specific for this right now, but that is the plan. If this moves forward on a larger scale, that we will be developing things specific for this patient population. So, any questions? And then I'm covering this for Marina also. So the CPI move for this meeting is child control. So one of the big things to remember about child control is that we're not using this on anybody that's any taller than head shorter than you. Again, because you don't want to get head butted in the chin or in the face. And that the primary thing to remember here is the blocking of the arms across the chest as opposed to across the chest this way, where you have the potential to impede somebody's ability to move. And this can be used sitting, standing, and or on the floor.
Alright, so we are kind of wrapping up. So like I said, the last couple slides is the opportunity to just kind of talk about some things that we're currently working on. So for the unit, we did hire a bridge CNA, Christine. So she is still in orientation and is learning kind of the ins and outs of all of the units. We are going to look at, once she is up and running, and now we have our intake specialists better staffed in our intake department, looking at our admission tasks and identifying what makes sense to be done on the unit and what makes sense to be done in intake. So any changes that happen from that will be communicated. There's nothing changing today, but just know that that's some of the things that we're kind of working on. And we will get some unit feedback on that too. We just had our charge nurse meeting, and we plan to loop in our charge nurses on some of those things as well. And then folders on admission. So right now it's like you get a folder in intake, then you get a parent folder, then you get a patient folder. So Alex has been doing a lot of work with looking at the folders and how we can just, instead of having 3, maybe have like 1 or 2, depending on the type of admission it is. So again, all that will be communicated. We're just working on that. The BPC risk assessment walk around is coming up. So annually, what we do is we get together and we walk around and pretty much pretend that we're state and look at what could possibly be a risk to patients. So come in the gym, look at what are the ligature risks, what could a patient use right now to harm themselves. And every single thing that we find in our facility, we have to put on a risk assessment sheet. And then we look at like the severity of it, the likelihood of it happening. So maybe there is something that could happen, but is it likely to happen? Maybe, maybe not. And then we point out the top maybe 10 things that are our highest risks within our building and what we're gonna do to work on those. So that is coming up on Friday, January 12th. We chunk out a pretty good chunk of time. I don't know that it'll take 3.5 hours, but we do have a lot to look at, and it's very meticulous stuff. So if there's anyone that would be interested in joining us on that day, it's kind of fun. You just take a step back. We do have non-BPC people attend too, so we have some people from employee health. Emily, she is like our team leader for like accreditation. She'll be here. We have some security, both BPC security and then non-BPC security. So it's nice to have fresh eyes because we see this every day. So sometimes there might be an obvious issue that we just look past. So it's kind of fun. If anyone wants to join, we would love to have you. So if you're interested, reach out to me or Marina, and we can add you to the list. And then DNB did share that they are proposing some changes when it comes to some different things that we need to identify in our policies and our risk assessment, things of that sort. So you already know a while back we put everyone on 15-minute checks. Now we are going to be looking at closer, how do we identify patients who are higher risk and what are we doing? It's going to be kind of an interesting task because a lot of our patients are high risk. I mean, we're an inpatient psychiatric facility, so we're going to be looking at that. A lot of these things we already do. We already do video, line of sight, one-to-one, sharps precautions, elopement precautions. Like we have all these things in place, but we're just going to try to categorize a little bit. So just so you know, we're working on it. There's no impact to you guys right now. I don't foresee really an impact. A lot of it we do. We just need to kind of spell it out and find a way to categorize it. So that's something we'll be working on. And then the last sharing I have is staffing for virtual providers. So Dr. Johnson, we know, is virtual most of the time. Dr. Tony is virtual all the time. For a while we had Dr. Vajayan virtual, so that was interesting in the sense of having 3 providers virtual at a time, possibly. So we are looking at how to be more efficient with that process. Right now we have to pull a support staff to sit with our virtual providers, and we just know that that's not the most efficient. So I've been meeting with a lady named Amber. I know Debbie's been in some meetings, and we're trying to make it more efficient and not have to utilize a support staff. So just know that we're working on it. We understand that that is a lot of manpower to sit with the teledoc machine, and we know that there's better ways to be using our support staff. So just know that we're working on it. If we do find something that works with this, we would then look to probably make our consult offices ligature free. So pull out the desktop, pull out the things that aren't needed in there, because then a patient could be in there with like an iPad or something and could be unsupervised. There'd be workflows with it. If if they're higher risk, maybe we still have a staff with. We'd have to have good communication with our virtual providers. There's other things that go into it, but just know that that's some things that we're working on. That's all I have. I think Pam is next.
So for updates for the therapy department, there's exciting things happening in the therapy department. We have a new Joe starting on January. Well, his first day is the 2nd. His first day here will be the 3rd. He's doing his HR orientation on the 2nd. I've got to stop saying new Joe because it's going to be weird if I actually call him new Joe. He has got a lot of experience working in school systems, so primarily he'll be housed on the child adolescent units. Probably the first 3-ish weeks of his orientation are going to be with Patsy and Leslie on the adult unit, so you'll get a chance to see him floating over there, and then he'll finish up his orientation primarily with Ashley on the adolescent and child unit. We also have a new position in our therapy department. It's a therapist 1 in training, so therapist 1 IT. This is a position that's designed for students that are working on finishing up their master's degree. It's basically like an internship position that is, we've got 2 people that are going to be filling that position right now. One of those is somebody that some of you would recognize. She's been around here for a little while. Her name is Marina. She's been an intern in our IOP program and helping out already a little bit on the units. So she's going to just have a more formalized position. And then Maddie from our intake department is going to be doing some hours. So you're probably familiar with Maddie already. She's amazing, and she's going to be helping out with some of that position as well. So we're still hiring. So if you know any people that are interested in being an inpatient therapist, please send them our way. It's an amazing team of people to work with, so it'll be a great experience for them if they come in this direction. We've got 1 position open on our child adolescent unit and 1 position open in our adult unit. So. But it's good. It's good.
All right, so case management updates. I only have one, and that's for those of you who don't know, Megan Rentmeester is taking a job outside of Belvin. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you and give everyone else a chance to say thank you to Megan. She's been a long-time employee and will definitely be missed here.
So as a leadership team around last October, like Jenny mentioned multiple times, staffing was way different. So we had a lot of staff picking up and we wanted to recognize it and appreciate it. So we started doing every shift you picked up, you got an entry into like a monthly drawing for a $25 gift card. And like I said, we started that October of 2022. And we kept track every single month until, or through October 2023. And what was it? I think we were just shy of like 1,400 shifts picked up, which is amazing and really speaks to our staff. And like their willingness to help out. So as a leadership team, we wanted to do like a big giveaway. So for staff, every 5 shifts you picked up, you actually got 1 entry into the grand prize drawing. And we had staff from pretty much all departments, which was great. So with that being said, okay. With that being said, we did actually get a 10th generation iPad. So all of you who picked up, if you have at least 5 shifts, you have at least 1 entry in here.
And really, we just want to thank everybody. I mean, there's no way we could have gotten through that staffing crunch. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's no way we would have gotten through it if we didn't have everybody picking up. And even if you didn't pick up, I know there were a lot of you who flexed your hours, you'd stay late, even early, you'd move off of your scheduled shift to work a night shift or a different shift that made sense or needed help. So, I mean, it was truly a team effort, so we wanted to kind of go out with a big bang here and do just the grand prize drawing. So, thank you. No pressure. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mallory. Is she here?
She's working the floor.
Oh, okay.
So, Mallory won, yeah?
Perfect.
So, thank you, everybody.
All right. So that is it for our team meeting. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about, or any questions anybody has? Okay. So with that being said, we'll wrap up. I hope you guys all have a really happy holiday. Our census is kind of trending the way we expect it, so there'll be probably more low abs and everything like that in the next couple of days. So take advantage of it, hang out with your families, enjoy your time off, and we'll see what January brings. But thank you guys.
If you're a BHS and you haven't stepped in my office yet today, please do that.
Yeah.